In 1920s had been exciting and dynamic as Britain celebrated the end of the war, but by the 1930s people were suffering. Unemployment and poverty gripped the country, and radical political movements in Europe meant that war loomed once again. Britain's economy was still recovering after the cost of the war when the New York Stock Exchange crashed. Inter- Internal trade was devastated, and demand for British products collapsed. The country had depended on traditional industries in the north such as shipbuilding and coal mining, but with nobody to buy the products, there was no money to pay any wages. Millions of people were made redundant and lived in terrible poverty for most of the 30s. This period of crisis is known as the Great Depression. Industrial communities struggled as shipyards and mines closed. People felt that the Prime Minister, Stanley Baldwin, didn't understand the hardship they faced. Many towns organised marches to London in protest against the poor financial support he offered. The most famous of these hunger marches was Jarrow Crusade on October the 5th, 1936. 200 men set off on the 408 kilometres journey from Jarrow in the northeast England to London to present a petition before Parliament. They walked for 25 days, but Baldwin refused to meet them. However, they won much public support, and gradually conditions began to improve. The 1920s and 30s saw the rise of an extreme form of politics known as fascism. The war and the Great Depression had left many Europeans desperately poor, and fascist leaders seemed to offer easy solutions. Mussolini and his Fascist Party had swept to power in Italy in the 1920s, promising wealth and stability, but his regime soon turned violent. When Hitler gained control of Germany in 1933, he pledged to rebuild the country's strength. He blamed high unemployment on Jews and vowed to do whatever it took to get rid of them. In Britain, Oswald Mosley was inspired by Hitler's ideas. He founded the British Union of Fascists, and in 1936 thousands of its members descended on Cable Street, a Jewish area of East London, to intimidate people there, but they were met with 300,000 protesters, and a riot swiftly broke out. Mosley was forced to cancel the rally, but although the protesters celebrated, the sense of victory would be short-lived. There would soon be a much greater and much more sinister battle to be fought. The US economy and that of the world suffered a severe blow When New York Stock Exchange crashed in October 1929, as share prices fell, people panicked and sold their shares, causing share values to plummet until they were almost worthless. Jobs were lost, businesses failed, and many countries were plunged into poverty. By the thirties, almost every British town and its also and its own had its own cinema. Silent movies had made it way for talkies movies with sound, and people were hooked. Charlie Chaplin was one of the biggest stars of the 1930s, raised in the wings of London's musical halls. He was on the stage from the age of 5. Chaplin often used his comical skills to make a serious point. Modern times, criticizing the inhumanity of factory life, and in The Great Detector he stars as a tyrant based on Hitler.